And I think I actually did it with a poem that I published this year, which I don't know if that might interest you by the end of the show. For writing a poem for every day of the year, I wrote a poem on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and African Americans praised me as I would read it at open mics, and that pleased me that I was able to touch people of different races and genders to be able to get a point across with a poem by just being able to come up with the right words. Oh, since it came up, alrighty, let me get my phone so I can get my poem up here for you. And yes, this isn't the poem a day, so I came up with this in one day. And it is called Our Color, Our Gender. There is a house inside of me. It's a house with a rich heritage, brimming with the knowledge of how our souls have flourished and how it can all be so quickly taken away. There is a house inside of me that has had to shut down to hide everything away because those who didn't look like me decided that I was nothing and treated me accordingly. There is a house inside of me. Its pulse has an infectious rhythm that we've had to stifle to hide from your generic white bread world. We only let it out when we're alone to save us from your madness. There is a house inside of me. I've hidden it away. I've sealed it up and placed it deep within, brimming with my history and my future. And I don't let it out when people can't think of me as human. There is a house inside of me. I've put boards over the windows to save myself from your storm. With your wrath, I've learned to not fight back, only because my captor won't listen. There is a house inside of me, and this house will stand strong, even after you have raped me, beaten me, tortured me, tried to kill me, treated me as nothing. But you were so wrong. There is a house inside of me, and what you don't realize is that this house will outlast yours. Trust me, if your house was built on distrust and such blatant disrespect, your house is bound to collapse. Because after all this time, and after my wanting to fight, I have learned that passive resistance is only a part of my story. Because in these struggles, I have gained a wisdom and a connection that is beyond this house inside of me, beyond this sharing, this inquisitive mentality. So I want you to remember, this house is a symbol for all like me, and for those not like me, too. Because I have a dream that everyone who suffered like this, and even those who have not, should share their stories with all of the world. No matter our color, our gender, our creed. This is my dream, because this is how we truly grow. Thank you. I only hear poets periodically talking about the border issues and about how there is one area in Texas where there is a butterfly sanctuary that they're thinking of putting the border wall through. And they're like, write something and do something and protest so that, you know, these sanctuaries can be around. I don't know what their opinions are on, well, as a rule, every poet is a liberal and hates Trump. So there, you'll only hear little tiny diatribes, and then people just try to shut up, and then they hear somebody lambasting the president, and they're pleased. So there's not that much individual, very specific talk. The only thing I happened to hear today was somebody talking about the sanctuaries and how they wanted to be able to put a wall through private property and a butterfly sanctuary south of here, and that was the only thing I had actually heard poets talking about. So otherwise I just listen to my Fox News and talk about how we need to have a wall, you know. Well, because I'm not running an open mic anymore, it has been, especially with this idea I don't know where I came up with the idea to write a poem every day, to be working on a couple of additional books, like that one that I was mentioning for every event of the year. I also, because I had told you that I had written poems for every element in the periodic table, if anybody wants to know anything about that, there is a book that is called The Periodic Table of Poetry. And if you look that up with Janet Kuypers, it is actually for sale. There are multiple poems for every element. It was actually released before all the last elements from through 118 had names, so they still have their old names in it, because I'm not changing that book. But it is actually $11.18 for elements 1 through 118 in the periodic table, if anybody's interested in that. Back in the day, I thought that I would write, I should be looking for projects. I can write for, how about elements in the periodic table? So I did that one. And then I also thought of trying to write poems for every book or chapter or verses in the Bible. And the point from doing that is not to do religious pieces, but to do poetry takes on these things. So I did one from Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 to 3 about how Eve must have screwed everything up. And so I've been starting to go through, and yeah, I'm doing Old Testament stuff first, but I'm figuring out what can I be able to do, and they are painstaking to work on, because you are not trying to make a religious stance with these pieces, even though they might say God says so or whatever, but I'm not trying to make them be religious poems, because there are a lot of secular people or people with different faiths or people who are atheists, and these poems are supposed to appeal to everyone and not be a religious statement. So I've been starting to do that. It's, as I said, much, much slower and more meticulous. I don't know how long that project will last. But right now what has been on my mind has been writing, which hasn't been on my mind as of late. I've been dabbling in too many other things, so I'm actually apparently getting back into writing somehow again after all these years. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Would his writing would his writing be in the writing section of scars.tv if you just search for his name? See, and that way, and then you can, and then way you could just select his name or your name or my name and select on any piece of writing, and when you do, in the next frame, the writing will appear, and also where it was published at the top of the page. So if you wanted to get a copy of whatever he was in or you were in, you can do that there as well. Anyway. What else might the world like to know about me? Well, I can easily say that they should get a copy of that book in depth, because they can learn a lot about me and my past and my history by getting that book. And I believe you bought a copy of that book, did you not, sir? In depth. I think you were like, yep, I'm going to buy it. Just did. And I'm like, what? You bought that book? I think I had just happened to tell you, hey, a bit of the interview is the last thing that is in this book that is being released. And you're like, just bought it. It's your email response to me. So I hope you like it. But I believe that tells you a lot about me. I think I said something like this before. You look at things and you learn about me, and like, you would think that I was an open book, that you know absolutely everything about me. Just remember that every writer keeps a lot of themselves hidden, and they pick and choose what needs to be shared with the world. So if you wanted to know any more about me other than going beyond from what you have seen or heard of my music or read of my poetry, find me and ask questions. I would love to be able to share it with you. So, honestly. Oh, wow, I have to find another poem. I didn't even have one. How many minutes do you have? Oh, I don't want to do a long one. I wasn't going to... You're like as long as you like, Janet. Well, I should find that, see if I can find a copy of Fantastic Car Crash that existed in a past show in one of these books. But then I have to find it. So what I'm going to do is find that poem for you because it exists in these books, and this is an easier way to be able to do it. So I'm going to find that poem for you. Because I had said if people wanted to know things about me, they could find. And I had said that one of those moments that I thought was very meaningful was that I did a show where I put a poem in the middle of a song of mine, and people seem to really like this poem that I put in the middle of the show, which I happened to write 4 days before I was almost killed in a car accident. So this has absolutely nothing to do with an accident or anything. It's just the strangest of coincidences. I shared it with my roommate, whom I had just traveled around the country with, and then I was in the hospital, and because I was unconscious, my sister started a place so that people could write letters, or journals entries, because I was unconscious. And the first entry was from my roommate, and he's like, "You just wrote a poem about this. This should have been me." Just because I haven't, but it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with the accident or anything. But this is an intriguing poem, and it's called "Fantastic Car Crash." And our life is one big road trip now, and we set the cruise control and make our way down the expressway. And most of the time we're just moving in a straight line, and the scenery blurs. There is nothing to see. But I know what's inside of you, and I know what you're made of. There's no such thing as a calm with you. You are a fantastic car crash. You stop traffic in both directions as the gapers gawk, and the delay grows, and they slow down and stare. Everything shatters with you, you know. It's a spectacular explosion. I try to duck and cover as metal flies through the air. And every time you leave the scene of the accident, I am left picking up the shards of glass from the windows. You know, the glass breaks into such tiny little pieces. They look like ice. It takes so long to pick up the pieces, and even though I'm careful, I'm still picking up the pieces, and I'm still on my knees, and the glass cuts into my hands, and then my blood drips down to the street. Think of it as my contribution to this fantastic car crash that is you, that is me, that is us, as I pull the glass from my hands and wave my hand to the line of traffic. Go ahead. Keep driving. This happens all the time. There's nothing to see here. Dramatic pause. Well, thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.